Nakatago ng malalim sa ilalim ng mga alon ng Western Pacific ang Marianas Trench. Ito ang pinakamalalim na bahagi ng lahat ng karagatan. Ang unang hakbang sa pagtuklas kung paano nabuo ang misteryosong peklat na ito sa crust ng Earth, at kung paano pa rin nito hinuhuhubog ang planeta, ay magdadala sa atin pabalik sa taong 1872. Noon, isang British research vessel, ang HMS Challenger, ang naglayag para sa kauna-unahang misyon na imapa ang ilalim ng karagatan. Tama, karamihan sa atin, sa kasaysayan, inaakala lang na lampas sa isang partikular na level. Ang dagat ay medyo patag, medyo patay, at walang buhay. Hindi sila umaasa na makahanap ng anumang interesting. Sa loob ng 4 na taon, ang Challenger ay naglakbay sa iba't ibang karagatan, tinakpan ng 70,000 milya. Katumbas yon ng 1/4 ng distansya papunta sa buwan. Ang crew ay sumisid sa kailaliman kada 140 milya, gamit ang kabuuang 249 na milya ng lubid at daan-daang libra ng lead weight. Nakakapagod at mahirap na trabaho iyon, pero noong panahong iyon lang ang paraan para masukat ang lalim ng ilalim ng karagatan. At nang makarating sila sa Western Pacific, 200 milya mula sa isla ng Guam, regular na ibinaba ng crew ang lubid para sa pagsukat. Pero patuloy lang na bumaba ang bigat. Malaking sorpresa iyon. Walang sinuman ang nag-akala na ganito kalalim ang karagatan. Kaya bigla na lang may mga scientist na nagsasabi, bakit kaya? Sa huli, tumama ang bigat sa ilalim sa 4,475 fathoms, halos 5 milya sa ilalim ng ibabaw ng karagatan. Ang mga scientist, wow, may nakita tayo! At ano ang ibig sabihin nito? Maliit ba itong butas? Malaking butas ba? Anong klaseng feature ito sa ilalim? Maraming tanong ang lumalabas kapag nakakita ka ng ganitong kamangha-manghang reading. Ang Challenger Expedition ang nagmarka sa pagsilang ng modernong oceanography at nagbigay ng unang crude map ng ilalim ng karagatan. Ipinakita nito kung paano dahan-dahang bumababa ang ilalim ng karagatan mula sa lupa at pagkatapos ay bumulusok ng libu-libong talampakan sa malawak na patag na kapatagan. Ngunit ang Western Pacific ay iba. Bumaba ulit ito sa 5 milya na malalim na butas. Isang butas na sumira sa matagal ng paniniwala na ang ilalim ng dagat ay patag at walang feature. At nagdulot ito ng misteryo dahil walang nakakaintindi kung paano nabuo ang kakaibang underwater feature na ito. 75 taon pa ang lilipas bago lumabas ang anumang sagot. Kinailangan ng isang revolusyonaryong bagong teknolohiya, ang sonar, para itulak ang investigasyon sa susunod na mahalagang yugto. Ang sonar ay unang na-develop noong early 1900s at pagkatapos ay na-perfect noong 1940s para ma-detect ang mga submarines na nagtatago sa kailaliman. Gumagana ang sistema sa pamamagitan ng pagpapadala ng sound waves sa tubig. Ang mga alon ay tumatalbog sa matitigas na bagay at bumabalik sa isang detector. Sa pamamagitan ng pagsukat ng oras na kailangan para bumalik ang sound waves, na-realize ng mga scientist na makakabuo sila ng napakatumpak na larawan ng mundo sa ilalim ng mga alon. Ang mga pangunahing navy sa mundo ay gumugol ng maraming oras at pagsisikap sa pagdevelop ng submarine hunting technology. Tapos, nadiskubre ng mga hydrographer na pwede pala itong gamitin para i-chart ang ilalim ng dagat at mas mura at mas madali ito kaysa sa paggamit ng maraming mandaragat na humihila ng mga lubid. Noong 1951, isang British Navy research ship ang bumalik sa deep hole na nadiskubre ng Challenger Expedition. Pero this time, dala na nila ang mga bagong high-tech sonar equipment. And you know what? The results were just amazing. Ang detailed sonar maps showed na yung deep hole sa Pacific Ocean floor, hindi pala siya butas talaga, kundi parte siya ng isang napakalaking trench. Imagine, it's 30 times deeper than the Empire State Building is high. Tapos, it runs twice the length of California. 500 miles mula southeast ng Guam hanggang northwest ng Mariana Islands. Grabe! People were probably super astounded sa nakita nila, Kasi obvious na yung ocean floor, sobrang laki ng pagbabago, very mountainous in some places. Tapos sa iba, may malalalim na parts talaga. Para sa isang geologist, sobrang exciting nito, promise. Even within the trench mismo, ang dami pang remarkable variations. At sa southern end, nanduan yung pinaka-surprising na part, yung seafloor, bumababa pa ng another 2 miles to its lowest point. Ang lupit, kasi that's a staggering 7 miles beneath the waves. Alam mo ba, scientists discovered the deepest part of the oceans? Even today, it's the lowest known point on our planet. They named this part of the trench, the Challenger Deep, in honor of the ship that discovered it. To get a sense of just how deep trenches are, imagine this. If we take the height of Mount Everest, we'd still have about a mile of water above us before we get to the ocean's surface. Ang lalim, diba? But you know, how the Marianas Trench was formed remained a mystery. Investigators decided the best way to find the answer was to dive to the bottom of the trench, to see for themselves the lowest point on the planet, the Challenger Deep. But they faced a major problem at the bottom of the trench. Ano kaya yun? They would have to contend with pressure 1,000 times stronger than at the surface. That's the equivalent of being squeezed on all sides by the weight of 50 jumbo jets. Grab, ang hirap nun. To demonstrate the effects of such pressure, scientists use a dummy head today. What we're going to do is actually put one of these styrofoam wig heads in the pressure chamber and expose it to the pressure we would see in the Marianas Trench. That's about 16,000 psi. A human skull would be crushed to a pulp, but the rubbery head will only have all the air squeezed out. And the rubber became smaller than the original size was. Difference between something that hasn't been 7 miles deep in the ocean and something that has, glad I'm not going there. At the Mariana Trench, human life is impossible. We're not equipped to resist those kinds of pressures, and so it's necessary to protect humans from that type of environment. The challenge to engineers was how to accomplish this. In 1953, Swiss scientist Auguste Piccard designed the Trieste, a pioneering vehicle that could withstand the crushing pressures. The submersible was dominated by a 50-foot-long hull, filled with light aviation gasoline and lead weights to control buoyancy slung underneath. It was, a tiny 6-foot spherical cabin with 5-inch thick steel walls. Finally, after 7 years of modifications and manned test dives no deeper than 3.5 miles, the Trieste was ready to attempt the 7 miles to the bottom of the trench. The commander of this perilous undertaking was U.S. Navy Lieutenant and deep-sea explorer Don Walsh. I know the astronauts, they go through this all the time. Why do you have to be there? Why can't we just put up a robot to do things? Gotta be there. Because that's what we do. Only a few officers and scientists knew about the risky mission, which was launched in January 1960 from the western Pacific island of Guam. Guam in those days was kind of backwater. It was just right for us because we were trying to do this project sort of out of sight, cause we weren't too sure it was gonna work. We just didn't want to be embarrassed by a failed science spectacular. Ray? Accompanying Walsh was the son of the Triestes, designer, engineer, and oceanographer, Jacques Piccard. The two men would spend the next 9 hours squeezed inside the cramped sphere, and we had 20 cubic feet of space inside. That's about the same as a household refrigerator, and the temperature was almost that cold inside. It was a drama. At a speed of just 3 miles per hour, they began their slow descent into the twilight zone. By 3,000 feet, the darkness was total. The only illumination was from the Trieste's powerful lights, the depths we're operating at. It was always black. The only thing that lit up the abyss was the bioluminescence from animals and plankton, like fireflies that carry their own light sources with them. Encased in their 5-inch thick steel sphere, Walsh and Picard quickly passed their test dive record of 18,000 feet. Everything appeared to be going to plan at the rear of the cabin. The crew were protected by a double layer of glass. So 2 hours into the dive, the outer pane cracked. We had a great big bang. Honestly, we didn't know what it was. We're about 20,000 feet down, and we looked around and checked everything, like every square inch of their tiny life. The supporting capsule was fighting back 8 tons of pressure, with the outer pane broken. The only thing between the men and instant death was a single pane of glass. If the inner window had cracked, we would have been instantly dead, maybe even before we know it. But, incredibly, the inner pane remained watertight. Walsh and Picard decided to continue the descent. After a tense, claustrophobic 4 hours and 48 minutes, they approached the bottom of the trench, only to be startled by movement on the seafloor just before they landed. We saw a flatfish, about a foot long, and that's a bottom-dwelling fish. So if you see one, there are others. Nobody expected to see life at these crushing depths, but it meant the explorers had reached their goal. The very bottom, the Mariana's Trench. The depth gauge with a reading of 35,800 feet, nearly 7 miles below the surface, confirmed the sonar findings. Squeezed inside their bubble of breathable air, the two explorers were closer to the Earth's center than man had ever been. We took a self-portrait. That's the picture that you see. So, we're gonna do it. And we did it, but there was work to be done. Walsh and Picard wanted to make detailed observations of the enormous trench. Unfortunately, the Trieste stirred up a cloud of fine, powdery sediment from the seafloor that obscured their view. It's like being in a bowl of milk at that point, so realizing where I could see anything, we decided to go and back up to the surface. Off the island of Guam and priest services after a descent into the Mariana's Trench, deepest after 9 grueling hours underwater, Walsh and Picard returned to the surface on January 23, 1960, and officially entered the record books for the deepest dive of all time. To this day, their extraordinary feat has never been repeated.